Hello guys, Alex with Bay Cities Construction here, and today we're talking about balconies. We have done a tremendous amount of balconies this year, and we have a lot of really good information to share with you. So if you're a building owner or you are a member of an HOA and you're considering dealing with the balcony issues, the balcony law, we're going to talk about in this video some of the worst case scenarios. We're going to talk about what is it going to take if you have to demo the entire balcony and replace it. And we're also going to go over some of the signs that you may have some major structural damage. This is the back side of a building that we're working on now. And on the top level is a 50-foot balcony. So this is a shared balcony between two units on the top floor. And then you've got two independent balconies. Now, this is what you would call a cantilevered balcony. Basically, what a cantilever balcony is, for those of you who don't know, is a balcony that doesn't have any support posts. It completely is free hanging from the building itself. These are considered elevated elements per the California codes, and regardless of whether it's an HOA or an apartment building, these are all mandated to be inspected. And by the way, you've got another year. The state of California has extended a 1-year extension. So you have to comply by the end of next year, mostly because there's so many balconies that are still damaged. All right, so let's go over some of the signs that you have damage. I'm going to zoom in here. And I always like, when I go and inspect these balconies, I am always looking at this rim board. You can see some discoloration here. You can see some discoloration here. And those are all signs of potential damage. When I look at the area up here, granted this picture, the image quality goes down a little bit when we zoom in, but we're looking for basically discoloration. When you have water intrusion into the balconies, it'll start growing mold, and you'll start getting this real dark haze around certain areas. In some cases, you'll actually have a crack, and it'll be really easy to tell that it's damaged. A close-up in this picture shows a lot of signs of water intrusion. If you see this, if you see the discoloration, the bubbling of the stucco, this means that you're getting water in there. This is not a good sign, people. You don't want to see this. If you look in here, you can actually see that there's some cracks in the stucco. Let's zoom in a little bit. It looks like somebody's repaired this. Guys, if you have some damage, don't cover over it without fixing the water leak, because I'm going to show you the next picture of this exact balcony. And when we removed the stucco, this balcony right here, same balcony we just looked at with all the stucco removed, you could see this board just broke. The outrigger that gives the balcony its strength was completely rotted. We just chopped off all the rotted parts, and it left us with, looks like somebody had done some repairs over time. You see this often, people doing patchwork. This doesn't work, guys. If you just put another little piece like that in there, you're not fixing anything. You're causing hinge effects, and you're causing all this stuff that's not good. There's some mold, some fungus growing on that. This one has deteriorated quite a bit. So this is a total knockdown, guys. This is what this is. You can repair them if they're not damaged in this section, but all the parts that are rotted here have to be removed. So there's no salvaging this outrigger. That was done. It was toast. So there's basically what we're going to do with this piece here is we're going to chop off all the rotted parts and put full length sister boards to that, and then they're going to go into the unit. And then this section here is going to get this outrigger. This is called an outrigger. It's a perpendicular beam. That's going to be completely removed and replaced with a full-size wood deal. And then we will put a new rim board along this line here, and then reattach the repaired boards to that. This is the same balcony before we demoed it. and I want you to see what the surface looked like. The surface had all sorts of holes, cracks that over the years were patched over, not redone, just kind of patched in place. You could see that the waterproofing had delaminated from the metal, and the metal was broken, has been broken. It's been rusted and rotted for a long time. So these balconies have been deferred maintenance probably at least 10 years, could be 15. And that's how you get to the point where it's completely rotted out. So if you remember, the section here, the outrigger here was gone. So the balcony was being held together from this point back. Now, for some reason, the boards didn't rot along the doorway. And it could be because of the little alcove. But that saved it, because if it had rotted here, it could have been a position where literally somebody could have fallen through, or the balcony could have collapsed on its own. So guys, when you look at these balconies, you can understand why California passed these balcony inspection laws. Many, many buildings that we have looked at are in bad shape, probably not as bad as this building, but I think in every building that I've gone to go and inspect, at least 1 to 3 balconies are in this condition where they had to be totally knocked down and rebuilt again. So this is basically, we're going to change out the sliding doors, and then everything that's rotted here was removed. And then we're going to have scaffolding on here, and the guys will get started on the repair. The other thing that maybe many of you won't think about is most balconies have lighting and electrical underneath. You're going to have to create a budget for that, because there'll be some electrical relocate that has to take place. So you can't overlook that as part of your budgeting expense, because most of that electrical is going to have to be disassembled and then rerun, especially if you put new floor boards in there, floor joists. In this picture, it illustrates what sistering looks like, right? So we're sistering the good boards, and we're putting a new board in, and then this has a new heavy rim to it. So this is basically how you repair any of the floor joists when they're broken. Now we're obviously gonna have to rerun this electrical here, but at least the main structural framing has been repaired, and the previous balcony never had hangers, so we put in new hangers connecting to the rim board. The door is on this side, and this is the rim of the balcony. We're looking underneath, we're looking from below the balcony, looking up. Folks, in this picture, this illustrates a balcony where the floor framing is different than, it's not cantilevered out. This system requires or depends on the outriggers being in good shape. And then it has parallel floor joists that run parallel to the door. But they basically, in this scenario, if the outriggers are not damaged, your repair is going to be a little bit more reasonable in time and in money, because most of the repairs are going to be done on the outside. Now, in this scenario, the outrigger was damaged. That's why you see a new beam here. And then the engineers designed these big ass brackets to be connected with these bolts, so that the connection between the rim and the outrigger is positive. Now you'll see these SDS screws, and basically that was when the guys were assembling everything. They use the SDS screws to tack everything in place, because it's pretty rough. Try and hold everything together just by these bolts. So we tacked everything first with the SDS screws, and then the guys came in and put in the big L brackets. Here's a different angle of the same balcony, but this one illustrates what it takes if you have an outrigger that's damaged. Look how long this thing is. This thing's about almost 14 feet long. And whatever your balcony sticks out, your span into the unit is going to be twice whatever it sticks out. So take that into account. The outrigger is this blue highlight, and then we had to replace the post underneath it and that's where it's marked here with the red. You can see there's a lot of hardware. There's a lot of work that goes into this. So a fully replaced balcony can easily run you between $50,000 and $65,000, and it really just depends on how big the balcony is and how deep you have to go into the unit and how much damage you have to do in the unit to make the repair happen. But you really, really want to avoid this kind of damage by making sure that the waterproofing system is intact. And we're going to go over some of the systems that we use here. This picture captures the third floor balconies. The waterproofing system is in place. You could see that there's new flashing. There's new flashing around the doors, and there's new edge flashing. And we left enough room for the stucco guys to be able to put their stucco underneath there. But this waterproof system is a multi-layer system. We use wire diamond lath first, then we use 3 coats of mortar, and we have a backup layer of acrylic with a fiber mesh, and then 2 more coats of mortar on top of that. This is a Life Specialty Systems AMAC system. It's a very nice, very robust system. You can see on here a guy is skimming the edge. This yellow part here is the fiber lath with the acrylic resin, and he's putting in a mortar coat on top of that. So it's a very robust system. And this system, if it is properly maintained, it'll have a lifespan of 20 years. But the truth is, you can keep it going even a lot further than that. It'll give you manufacturer's warranty up to 20 years. Life Specialty Coatings AMAC, A-M-A-C. So what you see here is the fiber mesh that's an acrylic latex, and that has been installed and is hard. We come back the next day and then float a coat of mortar on top of that, and that mortar is waterproof. It's part of the system, so you keep adding coats of the mortar, and it's waterproof with each additional coat. If you zoom in, I'm going to zoom into this fiber mesh so you can see it's yellow in the resin. That resin is it sticks to the previous coat of mortar, and once you coat it on top, it's also an anti-fraction membrane. It's basically a backup layer. It'll definitely it'll extend the lifespan of the system, and it creates a very robust waterproof membrane. And this video gives you a nice bird's eye view of the acrylic membrane that's down, and our team members installing the next layer of fortified mortar from Life Specialty Coatings. And you can see he starts off at the edges and works his way. And this is all trowel work, so it's all done by hand. The guys that did the framing, they added the 1/4 inch per foot drop or slope on the lumber, so he doesn't have to build up on that. He just needs to make sure that we don't have any flat spots, and that he follows the contour of the existing slope that we created. This gives us a wide shot of the coating. The balconies have been coated, and I want to go back a couple steps to show you from the outside. You've got the rim board. Those are all 2 pieces, 25 feet each. Solid pieces, and then they're joined at the outrigger. But this part here is the orthogonal outrigger for that same system, and you can see that we had to go all the way back into the house, into the unit, and then we installed these LTP5s to keep everything in place in the event that there's an earthquake. That's how that assembly looks in the event that you have to replace the outrigger. Replacing the outrigger is bad news, guys. It has a lot of expense, and it takes a long time, and it's definitely disruptive and destructive to the building. So we gotta make room for that new beam. We have to, and sometimes we have to shore up the walls in between the buildings, and it adds a lot of expense to the repair. So regardless of whether you have one balcony or a whole 100 unit building, you have to understand that the quality of the work that gets done is a direct reflection of the design. So you want to make sure that you have a good engineer with a good, clear set of plans that tell your contractor exactly what the assemblies are going to look like. So here is an example of one of the plans that we're working on, which is the building in this episode. And in here, basically you've got, this is the outline of the buildings. This is where the pool is. And then these are those balconies that I showed you that had a lot of damage in the courtyard. If we zoom in on here, it's very clear the sections that are going to be replaced, the details for the work to be done are very well documented and very well described so that we understand what it is, what the intentions of the engineer are. It's really important that you work with somebody who has good reputation and has a good amount of experience doing this type of work. In the rear here, this shows us the backspan of the outriggers that we had to replace. It shows the replacement of the wood of the floor joists in this section, and really shows a very clear depiction of what the assemblies are going to look like. You need this, and I'm going to tell you why it's so important. Not only obviously for safety, but more importantly so that your contractor can develop an accurate price. If you have a lot of unspecified components, unspecified details in how the geometry of the wood is going to go into place, then it's very difficult to come up with an accurate price for the work to be done. You can't even do a lumber takeoff. I've seen some plans. In fact, I'm going to show you. This is an example of a set of plans that we got last week. And the level of detail is pretty bad. There's not a lot of detail here. When you go into these notes, they're basically, they lack detail. I don't remember. These plans are supposed to be approved. I don't know how they got approved. There's a lot of information missing. There's no dimension lumber. There's no detail of hardware. See, most people don't understand this, and you wouldn't understand this if you're not a contractor, if you don't have construction experience. But you could spend as much time installing hardware, those brackets, the LTP4s, the Allen brackets. I think for our other job, we spent just on hardware something like $11,000-$12,000. So if you don't have a clear explanation of what brackets, what hardware you want, how is a contractor supposed to get you accurate pricing? If you don't have a detail of what the wood is going to be, how are you supposed to know what it's going to cost? So you need to know the species of wood, the dimensions of the lumber that's going to go in place, and how they're going to be assembled, and if there's any hardware, special hardware that's got to go. There's no indication here of what happens if we have to go into the unit. It doesn't have any clarification on the orientation of the wood or what the span into the unit's going to be, anything like that. So it's very difficult to be able to come up with pricing without hardware. I want to show you a drastically different set of plans. So these are the details for the Hampton. I'm just going to pick this assembly here. So for the floor joists that are perpendicular to the door, this is all the hardware you need. This is the sister board. There's a nail pattern for the sister boards. There is a hardware pattern that has to be, these are tension hardware, where you're going to put a post for the new handrails and where they're going to be. Basically, a tremendous amount of information of what it should look like once you're done. In fact, here we have an assembly for concrete. Here we have an assembly, the floor joist, if they're running if the floor joist, if they're running parallel to the entrance. So here's your handrail, here's your door, and then, like in the pictures that I showed you, the sections that are running parallel. So this is what the assembly should look like. This is what you need, guys. You need a lot of information. You need to make sure that an engineer takes the time to come up with a proper design. You have to open up the balconies where you have signs of damage. If you remember the sections of stucco that are discolored, that should be opened up. And that way the engineer can look with his own eyes or her own eyes and see the condition of the wood and also verify the orientation of the structural framing so that they don't design something that is not in line with the practical site conditions. Okay, so these are very important things. There's a methodology for doing this, and you have to follow the steps. So step one is to open up the areas of stucco that show signs of damage. Step two, do a job walk with the engineer and the contractor so that they both understand the scope of work of what you're going to have to do to make this correct. Then the engineer will come up with their design, and then the contractor can come up with a fairly close assessment of what the damage is going to cost to repair. You have to do it in those steps. Otherwise, you're just not going to have a very accurate price. You should also know that if you have a balcony that's gonna have to be knocked down, that you know it's going to be knocked down. Let's say a balcony that's somewhere between 65 feet and maybe even 100 square feet. You're probably going to spend somewhere about $50,000 per balcony for the repair. In some cases, you may even spend $65,000, and that'll just that'll be a factor of how much disruption inside of the unit you're going to have to make. How much drywall we're going to take out of the ceilings? Is there flooring going to be damaged, etc.? So there's a few factors that will come into play, but you're going to be in that neighborhood. If somebody comes up to you and tells you, "Oh, this is going to be $5,000 or $6,000 per balcony," they don't know what they're talking about, or they're not talking about repairing structural framing. If you're just talking about replacing the sheathing, the top, and re-waterproofing that's a different story. That will cost you obviously a lot less money. However, if you're talking about a total tear down, you're going to have to do all of these things. So you also need your engineer to include the handrail replacement, and you should always attach the handrail to the fascia board. You should never attach the handrail again, if you can avoid it, to the waterproof system. You want to definitely attach it to the outside of the fascia board so that you're not penetrating the waterproof system to attach your handrail. Well, guys, hopefully you found this to be educational. Guys, we have a lot of resources for you on our website, baycitiesconstruction.com. If you want to book a Zoom call with me in person on Zoom, with a live contractor on Zoom, you can do that through our website. Go to baycitiesconstruction.com. And if you want to keep track of some of the projects that we're doing and some of the cool stuff that we're doing with balcony repairs, make sure you like us and follow us on Facebook. And we have a YouTube channel that we post stuff there all the time. So we have a lot of means to share information with you. One of the best, I think the best ways to get resources is to book a call with me first. If you are an HOA and you're trying to herd because HOAs are like herding cats, get your other board members on board, hop on a Zoom call, and let's talk about your project. Let's look at your project and see what we can do to help you out. Guys, my name's Alex, Bay Cities Construction. I'm reminding you, you don't need a contractor. You need a team of pros, especially if you're going to get your balconies fixed.